All right, all right. We're live. We're going to let it breathe just for a moment here. Hang tight, y'all. Hang tight. Bring on Facebook and we'll get things cooking. Cooking with grease, as my friend JD would say. Are you sure it's not cooking with gas, JD? No, cooking with grease. All right, bud. Welcome in, everybody. It is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, with me, my fellow football priest. You know him, you love him, Zack Kelberman. Zack, we have a lot to talk about today, but first thing, I just want to get it off from the very tippity top. The most newsworthy aspect of today, the Broncos made a couple of roster moves, cut one guy, signed another. You had the story for us at MHH. Break it down, bro.
Yeah. So another player who I'm sure most fans have never heard of. This one is JJ Koski, a former undrafted free agent out of Cal Poly. Only has 5 games of experience, all coming with the Rams during their Super Bowl 2021 season. He's I think more of a return man than a receiver. The only stats he has in his career are 5 kick returns and 2 punt runbacks, but he did in college have 2,300 receiving yards, 18 touchdowns. He was first team all Big Sky in 2019. Make of that what you will. I don't know at this point of training camp in the preseason what the Broncos have in store for him. There's a lot of bottom of the roster receivers that are making more hay, that have been in the system, that are more, ahead of the curve right now. But that's the deal at receiver.
I don't know, man. I was kind of hoping that when we saw the obligatory roster tweaks, which, especially this time of year, it happens always throughout the football season, but especially this time of year, that bottom 2, 3, 4, 5 guys, they're not sleeping so hot Saturday night. They're not sleeping so hot Sunday night, because Monday, Tuesday rolls around and the teams are churning that bottom of the roster. But I was hoping maybe, Zach, that instead of adding another receiver, I mean, Broncos have pretty good receivers even beyond the top guys. I mean, you get to Kendall Hinton, Jalen Virgil showed a little something. Brandon Johnson, when he comes back, I know he's tweaked up and injured right now, but you got plenty of wide receiver wherewithal. What about defensive line? What about even seeing if you can't pluck an offensive tackle after what we witnessed on Friday night, which I didn't realize until today, Zach. Russell Wilson was the most pressured quarterback of the first week of the preseason in the entire NFL. 64% of his dropbacks were pressured, none more. So people like the CBS Sports dude, Will Brinson, I think that's his name, who's like, oh man, hit the panic button. I was hoping for great things with Russ and Payton, but oh man, did you see how he looked on Friday night? Sorry, dude, you got to do your math a little bit better than that. But what were your thoughts on seeing that statistic?
I really appreciate, I believe it was Warren Sharp, Sharp Football on Twitter, who put that out. I could be mistaken, but I appreciate him adding some context.
Hold on one sec, Zach. Hold on. Scott, are you hearing that? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
It's like it's all frozen. It might be on my end. Zach, finish your thought. I'll be right back. I'm gonna refresh. I'll be right back.
All right. So, like I was saying, I appreciate. I'm pretty sure it was Warren Sharp who put the stat out there. Provide some context for the game that we saw, because Russell Wilson was about 50%, a little north of that. It wasn't the best game, but as Scott puts on the screen, it was Warren Sharp, 64% pressure rate in week 1. So nearly 2/3 of the time that Russell Wilson was dropping back, he was getting pressured. That is ungodly. That is unheard of. And that is inexplicable. And that takes, I believe, a lot of blame off of Russ. And as Scott highlighted, it's not just a Russell Wilson problem. Obviously, if Jarrett Stidham, who played a majority of the second half, is at 59%. This is not a quarterback issue. This is a Broncos offensive line and protection issue. If you scroll down, I think Ben DiNucci's at 11% or 14%, something like that. Yeah, 11%. So he was getting rid of the ball quicker, but the point still remains the same. When the Cardinals had their first, second, and even third teamers in, they were getting to the quarterback unabated. There was no resistance, and you can't succeed. I said this last night. I'll say it again. I don't care if you're Russell Wilson. I don't care if you're Patrick Mahomes. I don't care if you're John Elway in his prime. If you're getting hit on 64% of your dropbacks, you are never going to accomplish anything in the National Football League.
Dude, Scott, you're going to have to show me how you do that without taking a guy off the screen. You swap us like that. Yeah, you're gonna have to show me how that's done, dude. That's handy dandy. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what was going on. I probably had too many tabs open, so had to relaunch the old browser. But yeah, to the point of the 64% pressure rate. I mean, Sean Payton kind of played it down a little bit today when he was talking about, yeah, we allowed a little bit too much pressure. We'll get that corrected, but he played it down. I was a little bit more concerned about it, mainly because Zach, of the history the Broncos have, and the history Russell Wilson has. I mean, one of the components to him wanting out of Seattle was what? I'm tired of getting hit so much, right? That caused all the controversy. The quarterback opened his mouth and said, I hate getting pulverized into the dirt when I'm supposed to be throwing the ball. Oh, how dare you, Russell Wilson? Did we grab David yet? All right, let's grab David, who's been a patient boy. Appreciate you. The Papa Bears, he's known in his neck of the woods. David McElrath saying, good evening, Broncos country. Chad, Zach, Dylan, and Deacon Scott, 12-5. He's still carrying his head high. Buckham times 3. MHH for life, Denver Broncos for life. Enjoy the preseason. I echo that, Zach. People should not lose sight of enjoying the preseason for what it is. We're getting to learn what it means to have Sean Payton as your head coach. You're seeing kind of culturally how it trickles down, how things are organized with their sideline stuff and between the booth. And then you get to see how these young players and these position battles resolve, Zach, in the preseason. That's what it's supposed to be about, not hand-wringing, rocking back and forth, sucking your thumb in the corner because Russell Wilson didn't go 10 for 10 and throw for 39 million yards in the debut.
Unfortunately, Chad, that's exactly what the prominent feeling in Broncos country is, based on what I've read, based on the comments we're getting, like from Craig here. Russ holds the ball too long equals pressure. And you can make your argument against Russ all you want, Craig, but how would you explain then Jarrett Stidham being third in that pressure percentage and him being pressured almost 60% of the time? This is not a quarterback issue. This is not a Russ issue. Russ is not the problem. For another year, the offensive line, the protection, those around Russ are the main culprits, specifically left tackle. It wasn't an all-pro beating Garrett Bolles and whooping him, and Ben Powers for that matter. It was Ben Gardeck and the Cardinals' second team defenders. They have to protect better, as Sean Payton said, because you can get, 2014 Russ back. It doesn't matter if you can't protect him. It doesn't matter if he has no time to throw. It doesn't matter if that pocket is crumbling around him on every single snap or 2/3 of those snaps.
Here's what Sean Payton said. I echo everything you just said, but here's what Sean Payton said today when asked specifically, Zach, his impression of the Broncos O-line pass protection in the preseason game, because it wasn't just Russ leading the way as the most pressured quarterback in week 1. Guess who was number 3? Jarrett Stidham. I detect a theme here, Zach. I detect a potential pattern. So you got to get out in front of that. So, coach, what's your impression of the O-line pass protection in the first game? Quote, the assignments were fine. We just got leveraged on a few plays and got hurried a few too many times. We will be able to clean that up, close quote. So he did kind of play it down, but should we take encouragement, Zach, from his apparent confidence of we will be able to clean that up?
Yeah, because look at Peyton's body of work. Again, he deserves the benefit of the doubt considering what he did in New Orleans, where they were perennially among the league's best offensive line units year in and year out. It's one singular preseason game. It wasn't ideal. You never want Russ, if he's going to play in these exhibition matchups, to get hit like he was and pulverized, but it was limited mostly to left tackle and Garrett Bolles. If you can get good Garrett Bolles on a consistent basis, the Broncos will be okay. We also have to keep in mind, we talked about it last night, it was Bolles' first game back from the broken leg, I think in almost a calendar year. He went down early last season. You're getting in a new offensive line scheme under Zach Strief. You were without your right tackle, Mike McGlinchey. Offensive line is the toughest positional group to nail down because it's predicated on one thing, and that is game reps together. You have to be on the field, all 5 players playing symbiotically side by side, or else it's never going to work.
Mark McDonald jumping in. Appreciate you, bro, with some stars. The winner on Facebook this last month of the jersey raffle. And we put that on the MHH Instagram channel. He sent us in his selfie, so go check it out. Mark, appreciate you, bro. He says, what's up, fellas? All this hate on Russ after one preseason game, shake my head. Relax. will be okay. Go Broncos. Amen. Just for craps and giggles, I want to be able to, not right this second, but at some point I'll pull it up later. Dylan wrote about today what Will Brinson had to say about Russ's debut performance, and it's just fun to read because it's so laughable. It's like, guy, come on, man, let's have a little bit of perspective. We'll get to that. Divine breaks, and then we're also going to do an update on where things stand on the super chat jersey raffle contest here on the 14th day of August. And Scott, maybe you get that queued up instead of what I was going to do, just in case. But Divine Breaks jumping in with a very, very generous super chat. Thank you. Really appreciate you. It says, at the end of the day, stats prove the O-line, per usual, is completely atrocious. Russ can have the fastest release in the game, but it won't matter, especially a heavy run with two tight end. Expect a heavy run with two tight end blocking sets. Yeah, you saw a little bit of play action stuff. I was surprised, Zach, how much just straight drop back we did see in the 20 snaps that Russ was on the field. Just because maybe Sean Payton needs to see too a little bit, like, how is this protection going to hold up? He said today again, assignment wise, we were fine. So in other words, guys weren't like missing things pre-snap. They weren't getting confused who they were supposed to block, etc. I guess that's, I guess you could say that's half the battle or whatever. Problem is, once they got engaged, they were getting beat, specifically Bolles, specifically Powers. The right tackle was relinquishing some pressure as well. So it is a big concern. One of the ways, as Divine breaks, and thank you again, Big Dog, that you mitigate against that is through play action, establishing that run. If you go back and watch a lot of Russ's bigger connections in that game Friday night, especially that one out to Cortland Sutton, that was a big play. They needed to keep the chains moving on the last possession. Little play action fake. Expect to see a lot of that type of stuff, because when there's a play action, you're not just Zach faking out the corners or whatever, getting the linebackers to suck up, trying to get the safeties to cheat a little. That play fake also, you can't help it if you're a rusher. If you're a defensive end or a rush linebacker and you're trying to get upfield to the quarterback and there's a little play fake, there's that split second that buys that quarterback time. It's literally nanoseconds, because we're talking about the NFL here, but still. So we'll see that play out.
Yeah, and it seems like, reading between the lines of Payton's comments, he was saying that the game plan, quote unquote, was in place and correct. It just came down to some players not executing, some players not winning their one-on-one, some players not pulling their own weight. And I'm looking at you, Garrett Bolles, when I say that. You mentioned, the Cortland Sutton play. There was an instance where Russ threw a deep ball. I believe it was against a cover zero blitz from Arizona, and Cortland just quit on the route. He should have kept running, and it fell incomplete. It's little things like that you can correct going forward, and maybe turn an incompletion into a long gain or touchdown. But Divine's point is absolutely valid. It's no coincidence that the offense looked a little more stabilized, a little more free-flowing when they had a tight end stay near the line as like an additional OL and chip or block or help the tackle who was struggling. So yeah, you're going to see a lot of running, a lot of play action, a lot of heavy tight end sets.
Keith jumping in. What's up, brother? Appreciate you. He says here, are the pressure issues on the O-line a player issue, a scheme issue, or is it just a need for more time? Honestly, I think we would expose ourselves to be ignoramuses if we were to pretend like we knew the for sure answer to this. The reality is, guys, we are one preseason game into Sean Payton's install, his philosophies, his coaching emphases, Zach Strief, his marching orders, and how that all trickles down to the O-line and stuff. We're one game into that, so it's hard to be able to answer that for sure. Zach, it looks to me that it wasn't per se a scheme issue. This is just off one single game, going off 20 snaps with the first team. It seemed to me that it was individuals just getting beat. Not guys missing a free rusher, all that stuff, guys getting beat. And so I think that's in part, Zach, why Sean Payton feels so confident in being able to say, we will correct that.
I think if there's an answer here, Keith, it's a combination of number 1 and number 3. As Chad was kind of saying there, it's too soon to determine if it's a scheme issue. I mean, Lloyd Cushenberry looked amazing in the preseason debut, and he was always a victim of the scheme, I feel like. It's a player issue because this is who Garrett Bolles has been traditionally over the course of his career, except for that 2020 season. He's been inconsistent. He's been unreliable. He's good until he's not. And when bad Garrett Bolles shows up, you're in for a long night. And bad Garrett Bolles definitely showed up on Friday. Also, yeah, a need for more time. Like I was saying before, it's the longest gelling process of any position on the field, the offensive line. All five have to play together. They need reps, not just practice, but game reps. And you didn't have your all five of your starters out there with McGlinchey missing time. So I think be a little more patient. If come week one, Garrett Bolles looks that bad against Max Crosby, for example, then we can kind of panic. But for one preseason game, I'll give Payton the benefit of the doubt.
We're going to do the super chat rankings right now, but yeah, before it gets much later, I want to grab them. But the one thing that aside from just the general feeling of, man, are we getting back Garrett Bolles here? Just like he was that bad in his debut under Payton. But if you think back to that one play, Zach, where he got beaten inside by the no-name dude, last name with the G, I'm forgetting his name. Yes. And Russ kind of fumbles the ball and then quickly holds up, gets onto it. Dude, if you go back and watch that, Bolles is doing his. I'm surprised he didn't get flagged because he straight tackled the. After he got beaten, the dude got by him. Bolles panics, grabs the dude's outside shoulder pad, and like straight tackles him, basically, right? And I worry about that kind of stuff coming out in the wash too. All right, guys, as you know, is it showing? Are you seeing this yet? That's weird. Let's try it again. There we go. As you guys know, we like to give back to our great supportive audience and community by doing a raffle every single month. We take the top 10 finishers on Super Chat in a given month. That's a cumulative thing. Their names go in a hat. We do a random drawing live, all right, a raffle. Winner gets a Broncos jersey of their choosing. And here's where the rankings shake out. This doesn't, of course, count tonight. So this is as of 13 days into the month of August. At number one at the tippity top, setting the pace, setting the tone is Michaela Parker, the Duchess. FA has climbed into the top two, leapfrogging a few people on his way. Ethan, the DWI guys, at number 3. GLP, the swashbuckler himself, Gary Palmer, at 4. Naj, going off last night in particular, really the last few nights. Naj jumping into the top 5. Zeus McPeak at 6. The Lady D jumping up a few spots to number 7. Troy at number 8. And then 2 more leapfroggers here. We got Gregory Vendeland at 9 and Sam Bam jumping into the top 10. And then Jasmine, we saw Jasmine's, she literally threw in a very generous super chat last night as we were like hitting end broadcast. And it resolved after we had just ended. So if we see Jasmine tonight, guys, make sure we get any topic questions she has on her mind. We'll get to it. But just outside the top 10, Jasmine, David McElrath, Divine Breaks, who's probably going to climb a little after tonight, Brent, Mike, Alonzo. So there's your updated super chat rankings for this month. And we love and appreciate you guys. Thank you. Phil, speak of love and appreciation, this man, got to tell you, this is a unique cat. This is a high quality dude right here. Phil down in Tucson. Love you, big dog. Appreciate you. It says, good evening, Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott. I believe too many fans are thinking about last year and Hackett. This is Payton. He's been there, done that before. He's seen the film, knows what needs to be fixed, and I have faith that this is what he will do. Hashtag Buckham, hashtag Go Broncos. I am reminded, Zach, as Phil says this, of what Terrell Davis said in the early aftermath of the Broncos hiring Sean Payton, which, to paraphrase him, was the Broncos needed a guy who could come in and not kind of guess what needed to be fixed, right? But a guy who could come in, take a look around, diagnose, okay, here's what needs to be, and know how to fix it. You didn't really have that assurance under either the last 3 guys. You didn't have that assurance. The last guy you had that modicum of confidence in was Gary Kubiak.
That was exactly the point I was about to make. This is the beauty of hiring Sean Payton. And I would feel I'm not going to ever overreact in any circumstance to one preseason game, though based on what I saw, I would be a little more I guess, apprehensive if it was a rookie head coach or a first-time coach or an inexperienced coach like the Broncos have had since Garrett Kubiak, from VJ to Vic to Hackett. But you don't have to worry about that. Sean Payton has seen everything the NFL can throw at him. He's been through every negative situation, every bump, every hiccup, and he knows how to fix those issues. That's what makes him one of the best head coaches to ever wear a headset.
Indeed. Well said, bro. And yeah, I wish we could kind of snap our fingers and have Zach Strief come out of retirement to take up, his spot on the O-line. But I don't think even if he was young enough and still in shape enough, he'd have to put on a lot of weight. That's one of the things that happens for these O-linemen when they get out of the league. They shed so much of that, for real life, superfluous weight. They look that way because they need to be that way for the game. But outside of it, as soon as they're done, I mean, look at Orlando Franklin, man, just it's gone. Tommy Nalen, another good example. But Scott, what's up, dude, on Facebook, throwing down. Really appreciate you, bro. Says, the only thing I can think of is these fans that show disrespect is they never played football, have no experience besides being a fan. There might be some truth to it, but I think a big reason for all this stuff, guys, is we're seeing people, and it kind of speaks here to what Leroy's saying. Good to see you tonight, Leroy. Also, fans are just kind of, Broncos fans in particular, just a little bit traumatized. And that trauma, Zach, comes from having the high hope and confidence and expectation and then having it shattered again and again. And then last year was like the breaking point, unfortunately, for a lot of people. And so, like Leroy says here, sorry, but Russ is never going to get his fair shake till he's out of a Broncos uniform. Our fans are so bad to him. Even if he's cooking, they still find a way to criticize him. And, the national media played a role in that too last year in terms of taking and blowing every little thing out of proportion, making Russell lampoons act. But I just think people, fans right now, and this is something I think Sean Payton, especially having spent a year in media, I think he realizes this. The Broncos can't afford to start slow. They can't come into the first quarter of the season, go 1-2 to open things up, or else the villagers gonna be restless. You got to come out and show results right away.
I talked about this last night. Russ could have went 20 for 20 for 500 yards and 6 touchdowns. And his detractors, of which there are many, would have said, well, why didn't he throw for 600 yards and 8 touchdowns? Nothing he can do will ever be good enough for some sect of the fan base. That's just the way people are nowadays, especially in the social media environment that we find ourselves in. Fortunately, it's easy to block out those fans. It's easy to block out the trolls. They don't know ball. They're just in it to be inflammatory and drive up, I guess, conversation that they feel is appropriate. But those who know. Russell Wilson, in a very brief sample size, though he wasn't perfect, looked a lot more in command, looked a lot more decisive. And when he was given time, he was completing passes and moving the ball down the field. That was all I wanted to see from Russ Chad in game 1, and he accomplished that.
Well said. All right. I want to get your thoughts on this, Zach. All right. Specifically, I mean, I already kind of know what you and I share a similar view on the meta aspect of this particular topic, but we've been talking about it all night. But I want to get your thoughts on this. So this is Will Brinson of CBS Sports, and writing some of his takeaways from the first week of the NFL preseason. He had a section called, "Is Russell Wilson Washed?" And he goes on to say, I'm going to quote a couple parts here, Zach. "Plenty of people will tell you Russ was fine during week 1 of the preseason, his first live action in Sean Payton's offense. I am not one of those people. Russ was one of my MVP sleeper picks, so this isn't confirmation bias. He didn't look the way I hoped he would in his first action with Payton calling plays. This might not be remotely indicative of how Russ ends up playing in 2023. This is something to remember right here. This is his little hedge. But the highly scrutinized quarterback played well into the second quarter of Denver's matchup against Arizona, less than 8 minutes before halftime, and he looked lethargic. Guys, go read this article from Dylan. It's great. One last part here, Zach. Brinson goes on, "I don't care about the points scored at all. He threw a touchdown to Jerry Jeudy, but it was a slant against a silly cover 0 all-out blitz. Great job by Russ to throw the ball, but that's a freebie. Jeudy killed him with a bad drop the play before, and he was penalized by several missed kicks, talking about Russ, and heavy pressure from Arizona. But Wilson didn't step into any throws. All right. Oh, this dude. And just generally didn't seem comfortable or quick in the pocket. I'm comparing him to Drew Brees, which is unfair, except it's not. Brees, Russ have been compared for years, and Payton turning Russ into Brees 2.0 or Brees 1.5 was the big selling point of this marriage. Brees dropped back, moved in the pocket, scanned the field so quickly you felt like he was on fast forward. Russ looked like someone listening to a podcast at half speed while sitting in quicksand. I'm not sure he stepped into a single throw on Friday night. And then, thankfully, where to go? Dylan had the illustration here of the tweet from Warren Sharp, football. 64%, the highest pressured quarterback in the NFL in the first week. Anyway, your thoughts?
Where do I start here? I want to go on a, like a old school KK type rant, breathing dragon fire. I don't think it's worth it. I don't want to give Brinson my energy. First of all, I don't care what Will Brinson thinks. He goes, I'm not one of those people. I wish I had the quote in front of me still, but he's giving himself a lot of moral superiority, and that's what these Russell Wilson critics do. They act like, thank you, Scott or Chad, they act like they're the ones that can gatekeep the Russell Wilson opinions, and nothing else matters. And that's, you mentioned the out that he was given there. I talked last night about plausible deniability. That's what these critics love, especially when it comes to Russ. And I've never seen criticism like Russell Wilson has received. But they'll say his first incompletion, oh, see, I told you so. But they'll leave themselves open just in case Russell Wilson performs good, then they can play both sides. I have no respect in any facet of life, football or otherwise, for fence sitters. You have to take a stand, take a position, and not waffle. And that's exactly what Will Brinson's doing here. He fancies himself as this football expert, but he talks about Wilson not stepping into any throws. Well, maybe, Will, if you watch the game, you can't step up into the throw if you don't have time, if you don't have protection, if there's a defender in your lap. I'm sure you watched, and I'm sure you enjoyed. I was going to say something else. The 2022 Russell Wilson tape, I'm sure you had a couple tissues on hand watching that. So you would realize the offensive line was just as bad. You realize that he had no protection. Well, that continued into the preseason game. So to make these big sweeping generalizations, I am not surprised by it. I'm starting to kind of let it go and not be as annoyed, but you see it in front of you, Chad, and it's infuriating every single time.
This idea that, first of all, amen. But this idea that, he threw a touchdown to Judy, but it was a slant against.
If he would have missed that, Chad, I'm sorry, but if he would have missed that, he would have gotten killed.
Of course he would have. But to say that, like, I'm not going to give a guy credit for doing his job. I'm not going to give a guy credit for beating a blitz. I'm not going to give a guy credit for seeing where the pressure's coming from throwing into the blitz and resulting in a big play. No. I want to talk about how, he didn't score basically a touchdown on every single drive, I guess. What is the standard here? He didn't have time to throw. All right, well, we understand why now, right? He was completely under pressure. He couldn't step up. Let's go. You're criticizing him for not stepping up. He couldn't. So, yeah, I'll say it reminds me, maybe it's just, I'm starting to wonder if this is my own confirmation bias here, Zach, shining through. But I've only seen two quarterbacks in recent times in my sphere that come close to this kind of derangement people have over Russ. And that is, of course, Drew Lock derangement syndrome. Got pretty damn hectic for a time. And then I got to really throw it back to Tebow. But the funny thing is about Tebow, going back to 2011, is, yeah, he got all kinds of this cork sniffing. Let me hold my nose and talk about why Tebow sucks while the Broncos keep stacking wins. He had that going for him. He gave you kind of an ugly brand of quarterback, but you couldn't deny when the chips were down, found a way, made a way. Broncos won games in that particular season. Those are the two kind of, examples that come closest. But last year, things really did jump the shark with regard to Russell Wilson because, Drew Lock derangement syndrome, Zach, to be the most, speaking of the most recent phenomenon, that was mostly relegated to Denver. No one else nationally gave a flying flip about Locke. Occasionally we get a story from like Colin Cowherd talking about him or something like that. But it was mostly a Denver, a Bronco-oriented phenomenon. Wilson was a complete national phenomenon. The depths to which people in the media sunk to blow every little thing he did or didn't do out of proportion, that I think it, unfortunately, Zach, has kind of poisoned the minds not only of a lot of fans, but obviously even people in the media like Brinson.
The Drew Lock hate was bad, and you're absolutely correct. I echo everything you said. The Lock hate was bad, but it doesn't come close to the Russell Wilson, and that's the best word for it, derangement. The criticism of Drew Lock was mostly limited to his play on the field, which is understandable to an extent. The Russell Wilson hate extends far off the field, from his personal life to his commercials, to his catchphrases, to his workout routines. Everything Russell Wilson does, he can breathe, and he would be criticized for that. And it's become a fad to the national media and even some in local media to dump on Russ whenever they can. And it's so played out and so old, and we can ignore it and we shrug a lot off. I've laughed a lot of the Russell Wilson hate off just in 2023. But when you're talking about a game that he just played in and the film is right in front of me, it's not subjective, it's objective. To say he didn't step into any throw, to willingly and go out of your way and do gymnastics to not give him credit, like you were talking about for that Jeudy touchdown. If he would have missed Jerry Jeudy, he would have gotten skewered. But the fact that he hit him, still not good enough for these haters. I don't care, though. Let him hate.
Let him hate. And if it was, let's say, Patrick Mahomes, someone writing about a takeaway, Patrick Mahomes throws a touchdown on a play that was a fourth down, near the red zone and into a blitz, people be bending over backwards to talk about how it's just yet, I know it's the preseason, but it's just yet another example, Zach, of this quarterback's brilliance. So if it's good for the goose, y'all, it should be good for the gander. And when it's not, those people expose themselves. Naj in the house. What's up, bro? Great to see you again tonight, my dog. Thank you so much for the support, dude. Looking forward to seeing you in just a couple months' time now. Says, hey, bros, what I care about is attitude. And Payton and Russ's disgust after losing that preseason game is exactly what I want to see. Changing that culture starts at the top, and you can see it happening. Give it time. Indeed. Oh, the quote, to paraphrase Sean Payton, hey, how did you handle things in the locker room after the game, coach? This was Friday night. He said, I told the guys that you just hate to lose. You hate to lose. And, Russ was equally, last year, we got to remember, guys, for us, it seems like just another day at the office of being a Broncos fan post Super Bowl 50, the losing. But for Russ, last year was a exception. It was a singularity. This is not a guy accustomed to losing, and it's obviously not a guy who's complacent, Zach, with losing. So these two guys combined, you give it a little bit of time, all right? Beyond the preseason, let's have fun analyzing what we see in the preseason, but let's just not go jumping to lasting conclusions based on what we see.
Get out of here with all that common sense, Chad. It has no place in today's world. Though, not to read too much into it, I was watching or rewatching Russ's press conference after the game. I was watching it on YouTube and just kind of reading his body language and looking at his face and kind of discerning how he felt. After a loss last season, for example, he would be upbeat. He would be kind of cheerful. He'd say, let's ride. And that would rub a lot of people the wrong way, smiling in the face of something bad. If you go back and watch his presser after Friday night's game, he looked mad. He looked like he hated to lose too. He looked like that Sean Payton's culture and his own, machinations were rubbing off on him. And it was epitomized with the way Russ ended the presser. Usually he's very appreciative to talking to the media. He's still upbeat. This was how he said it. He goes, thanks guys, go Broncos. Like it was, you can tell something was bugging him there. You can tell he was either, just tired of the losing, or the fact that nothing really changed from an offensive line standpoint, that he knew a lot of the same things from last year, minus the coaching, were rearing its ugly head. So that's important. That's an important note to take out of this game, that the culture is being shifted and this team will not be comfortable with losing.
Man, I hope they're not comfortable with allowing Garrett Bolles to just do his thing like that, because if missing 12 games, and as you said, by the time you get to the regular season opener, he will be 1 month removed from a year since his injury, right? So, like, all that time away, he was a guy that really needed as much of that momentum and that repetition and that time on task to improve his play and get that second contract, become a second team all pro and all that stuff. And the farther that's in the rear view, and then you also, Zach, throw in that big missed chunk of time, I do worry. I don't think Sean Payton is going to play that too much. In other words, like, if it becomes a pattern from Bolles, I think he will get pulled. Payton didn't draft him. Payton didn't extend him. Payton cares about what's happening right now. Robert Otteson, what's up, bro? Great to see you tonight. Thank you, buddy, for the super. Says the same people who complained about Drew are the same fakers who now complain about Russ. We'll never make them happy. Undeliverable love from Nevada. Robert, thank you, bud. Appreciate the sentiment, my friend. And you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Gary Palmer jumping in as well. Thank you, brother. Great to see you tonight. Hi, Chad, Zach, Dylan, and Scott. Thanks for keeping us updated. His message is, just relax, fans. Everything will be okay. Go Broncos. Just pretend we're listening to the second solo on Comfortably Numb, Pink Floyd, right? You've got David Gilmour up there rocking the Stratocaster. We're just doing this right now. Thank you, GL. We needed that.
If y'all could see Chad and Scott simultaneously waving their hands, it would have been a sight to behold. But yeah, Gary, your point is very accurate and appropriate here. It's one preseason game. I think there was more good than bad that came out in Arizona. Just trust the process. It'll be okay.
Real quick, I want to segue, Zach, to Garrett Bolles, what he said post-game. This was an article that Keith had for us today. Hey, Garrett, what'd you think about how things turned out tonight? Blah, 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 20 snaps. Quote, I just think that we dusted the rust off and started getting into a groove. It's good to see those things. We have new faces in our lineup, so it's good to see those guys get in there and do the things that they need to, but one touchdown isn't going to cut it. And then he goes on to say, we have to do better in all aspects of the game. 7 points isn't going to cut it. It's not where we need to be. It's a good starting point. We are going to watch the film, break down the film, and see what we need to do to improve. Close quote. So, Zach, he's kind of saying, look, cut us a little bit of slack. The rust was falling off in chunks, and we have some new faces. So, that I think is the rationale anyway he's trying to sell.
Yeah, but it's like, show me, don't tell me. It's if it came from anyone but Garrett Bolles, if it came from McGlinchey or Powers or someone relatively new who doesn't have the history with the Broncos that Bolles does, I would take those words with a little more merit. But that's been the case with Garrett his entire NFL career. He's good until he's not. He can be good for 59 snaps a game, but on that 60th snap, he'll let up a crucial sack or he'll commit a holding penalty or a personal foul. He was absolutely dreadful against Arizona. I'm always kind of waiting for the shoe to drop watching Garrett Bolles. I never really think he'll be 100%, but I wasn't expecting him to look that bad, getting whipped on multiple occasions from arguably the worst defense or even the worst team in the entire league. I don't care about Rust. I don't care about some of the new players that he's using to excuse himself here. You have to win your one-on-ones. You and you alone have to be better, because when you're bad, it brings down the entire ship.
Well said. I want to grab this from Chris Carrillo on he's talking from the watching the show from the MHH Superfan Facebook group. Chris, real quick, I'm going to grab this, but I almost didn't because it says Facebook user, and you don't know who it is. It's kind of hard to get the question or the comment or whatever. So when you watch from the MHH Superfan group, this goes for everybody. There's, 11,000 people in that group now. You got to make sure if you're going to comment, you got to go right underneath the box where you see me talking now. Open up that description. You'll see a little link to click to go to StreamYard that gives them permission to show your user profile from the group. I don't know why it's different in a group than it is if you're just commenting on our page, but there is that. So Chris, he says, what's up, Chad, Zach, and Scott? What do you guys think of these Russ haters that blame everything on Russ when he does good things? I find myself telling them that they're spoiled by the Manning era. MHH for life, bridge the gap for life. Yeah, baby. Denver Broncos for life. Buck them, including the haters, hating our own team. Hashtag frustrated. So, Zach, we've spent a lot of our time on this subject tonight. Yeah. But what are your thoughts about the idea that the people that are so panicked over Russ, they were just spoiled from the Peyton Manning era?
I don't know, and I appreciate the comment, but I don't know if that's the case, because if you think about Peyton Manning's training camps, this is a quarterback, at least in his first one, he threw a ton of picks. He was not sometimes great in practice, though obviously he always showed up on game days. So I don't know if it's being spoiled by Peyton so much as being ruined by the post-Peyton era, but the people that take it to a next level with Russ, it's one thing to say, I wanted more, I expected more, but I still see some glimmering hope. But the ones that completely disregard Russ, that say he's washed, that Jarrett Stidham provides the Broncos a better alternative, or Ben DiNucci, they are overall either trolls or just miserable people that want to drag everyone else down into their misery. So I would pay them as little mind as possible. If you know about Russ, the hardcore, the intelligent, educated Broncos fans have optimism and hope that Russell Wilson will be better, because he showed he's getting better in the preseason game.
That's right. The Boogmeister jumping in. Good to see you, my friend. Hope you've been well. Says, what's up, big dogs? Glad I caught you live. Me and the family will be out at the meet and greet. We can't wait. Hashtag everyone breathe. Dope, dude. We look forward to meeting you. That's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you for letting us know, too. We've got a kind of unofficial RSVP list that is considerable. So stoked on that. It's going to be a gas. We've got the Minnie Cooper, as she goes by, on Twitter. Gina Cooper jumping in on Facebook. Great to see you tonight, Gina. Thank you for the support. She says, evening, guys. So about the kicker position, did we gamble too much on the Mar Fry, competition with false hope in letting McManus go? So, yesterday it was kind of our gut reaction, but not really, because, part of the gut reaction is when we go live, it's right after a game. We haven't worked out the hormones. We haven't rewatched anything. We haven't listened to the post-game pressers. Like, it's just raw off the cuff. But we had a day or two to kind of marinate on some things. We talked a lot about actually the Mar Fry issue from Friday night. What's your answer now, Zach, sitting here on a Monday night?
I'll repeat what I said last night, Gina. I wouldn't change the Brandon McManus decision. I think the Broncos still made the smart move moving on from him, because it was a financial rooted call. He was being paid too much money and not performing to that contract. Now, if he would have accepted a contract like what he got from Jacksonville, I think it was like $2 million or whatever, standard for what he's been performing at, then I would want McManus back, but not at the price that he was costing the team on the salary cap. Between the two, you feel confident that either Maher or Fry will at least replicate McManus's production, and that might be the case. I'm not going to overreact to one preseason game. It's preseason for a reason. The Broncos, even the Cardinals, had a missed field goal, and that field was in terrible shape. Let's see, in the friendly confines of Mile High, how the kickers do in preseason week 2. Then we'll go from there.
Well said. Shout out. I saw Albert in the chat earlier. Great to see Albert, the Mile High Dutchie, with us. Hope you're doing well, big dog. Give our best to the missus. Clayton on Facebook. And by the way, guys, we're about out of time. So if you have a burning topic, question, get it in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to it. But Clayton on Facebook, a longtime supporter, saying, smash the like button and share it, guys. Thank you, bro. It was great to see the Broncos football again. Let's not hit the panic button yet, guys. Only preseason. I see good and bad, but let the kinks out now. Yes, indeed. Yep, work those kinks out now. Patrick, staying safe. Good to hear. Aloha right back at you, big dog. Thoughts and prayers for Hawaii for sure. And then we got one here. Selvin saying, I'm a huge fan of you two priests. Love that y'all keep it so real for us Broncos fans. Hashtag state of being. Hashtag New York City Broncos fan. The Jets got Dalvin, and Russ and the crew better be ready. to cook these fools. That's right. So Broncos were, Zach, tied to Dalvin all off season after the Vikings, even before the Vikings moved on. He ended up signing with the Jets, who there's already a lot of stuff between the Broncos and Jets established, plenty of bulletin board material. They gave him $8.6 million. So what's your thought on Dalvin joining the Jets and, of course, the Broncos being able to see him later this year?
It adds another subplot to what could be the game of the year between the war of the words, Payton, Hackett, Rodgers, etc. It's going to be fireworks in week 5, appointment television. It's a lot of money, I think, for Dalvin Cook, considering the state of the running back market, but good for him, I guess. He'll be in a timeshare with Breece Hall, and he's a good player. I would have liked the Broncos to pick him up, but I realized he was always way more of a luxury than a necessity. And in hindsight now, I'd rather the Broncos put that $8.6 million toward a tackle, a defensive lineman, etc. So we'll see how that shakes out in week 5. It's going to be an amazing game.
Well said. Okay. About out of time. I'm seeing if there's anything burning from a topic perspective that we haven't already covered here. Yeah, Dustin, keep your chin up, buddy. Keep your chin up. He's saying Russ will be benched by week 5. Oh, man. This is from Mr. Producer. Zach Wilson carrying a higher cap hit than Aaron Rodgers right now, Zach.
It's the way I think Rodgers structured that deal. He took like a $50 million pay cut this year, and a lot of the money is pushed to next year. But the point is still pretty hilarious when you consider how far Zach Wilson has fallen in New York.
Shout out to Eugene in alien capital of Roswell, New Mexico. Denver Broncos for life. Right back at you. Okay. We're getting this from Kenny, and then we're going to dip on out, guys, unless you have anything burning for us to talk about. Kenny, appreciate you, bro. Great to see you tonight, even at the 11th hour. You've been really, really consistent the last month or two in the support and contributing to the conversation. So keep it up, brother. Keep it up. It means a lot to us. He says, good evening, fellas. Glad I got to catch you live. The whole show, great show. I did see improvement from Russ with bad left tackle play. Thanks for the great content, though. Yeah, again, if that was Patrick Mahomes beating a zero blitz on a critical 4th down after 3 unproductive drives, everyone would be going, man, did you see that read he made? The football brain on this dude to say nothing of that cannon for a right arm. That's what they'd be saying. They don't say it about Russ, though, because everyone now has been trained. We've already talked a lot about why they've been trained, but they're now trained, Zach, to find that hole in the boat. And the only thing that's going to cure it, guys, the only thing is winning. That's it. It can't be a little bit of winning. It can't be 8-8. It can't be, improving by 1 or 2 victories over last year, getting to 6, 7 wins this year. No. The only thing that makes that stuff go away is Russ getting out there and winning games. And I think you're going to see that. And I think Sean Payton understands, talked about this earlier, there is a little bit of urgency, not just because it's been 7 years since playoffs, but as someone who was in the media, he understands even more now, 15 years of being a head coach. That made him an expert in dealing with the media. Then he's a media guy for a year. Now he understands, dude, we got to get out to a hot start. We don't need to be 2013 Broncos, Zach, with my quarterback throwing 7 touchdowns in the season opener, but we need to be really, really good and stack a couple of wins in that first 2-3 weeks of the season. And then a lot of this stuff burns off in the atmosphere.
I'll say this, Russell Wilson played turnover-free football despite being hit 64% of the time. He had a 100.2 rating, I believe, something like that, despite being hit and pressured that often, despite missing his right tackle, despite missing Javonte Williams, the foundational piece of that Broncos offense in his first game in a Sean Payton offense. If Russ can do that with that aforementioned terrible left tackle play and mostly non-existent offensive line play, it makes me encouraged and hopeful and excited for what he can do when he's actually given time. That's how I look at it.
I'm glad you brought this up, Phil, and because it actually speaks to a comment I was going to get earlier from Cameron Wadman on Facebook. Appreciate you, Cameron, with the question: who do we find to replace Bolles when it comes to free agency? And yes, Cameron, we love you right back, big dog. Phil says, I'm pretty sure after the 29th, there will be players that could upgrade both lines. And what he's speaking to here is the final wave of cuts. All right. It's going to flood the NFL wire with options for the Broncos. And so, they have a couple of weeks between now and then, Zach, to see how some of these competitions play out. When Sean Payton kind of almost seems dismissive of how bad the protection was on Russ the other night and speaks to, we will get that cleaned up. Well, let's see. Let's see how that comes out in the wash. But if it ends up kind of staying this course of being a little touch and go, the protection, well, they're going to have some opportunities to upgrade the O-line and the D-line.
Yeah, you mentioned when we were talking about J.J. Koski, the receiver they signed, that you would have hoped it would have been a defensive lineman or offensive tackle, the priority, obvious, glaring holes. I just don't think the Broncos are going to settle for a J.J. Koski at tackle, or at defensive line. They are waiting for a big shoe to drop, a relatively big name player to shake loose during final cuts, and they have their eye on who they want and what areas to upgrade. Sean Payton, on multiple occasions this offseason, even fairly recently, told the story of how the Saints found Taysom Hill. Very last minute, a player who was waived at final cuts, very chaotic. They got him in the building and he became who he is. The Broncos will, very active around 53-man cuts. And I would be shocked, Chad, if they didn't bring in another offensive or defensive lineman.
Agreed. Another shout out to Eugene, bro. Appreciate the stars, my friend. But guys, we're out of time. We're going to do a couple of messages though, so don't quite leave.
Terrific episode, as always, of the MHH podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on Twitter at the MHH pod. You can follow the main account on Twitter, the mother account, as it's called, at Mile High Huddle. Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch, like we're always rocking, hats, shirts, bucket merchandise, anything you can imagine. It's Chad's wearing right now. I'm wearing. MHHmerch.com. Check that out. If you haven't done so, drop us a like at Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. And if so, if you haven't followed us on Instagram, change that by giving us a follow at Mile_High_Huddle. Be sure you're leaving your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some of that merch each and every single month. But if anything, y'all, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
Amen to that. Shout out to these great supporters and Super Chat superstars this evening. David McElrath, Divine Breaks, Naj Altaf, legendary, mythical figure. Robert Otteson, GLP, the Swashbuckler. The Boogmeister, Kenny on Facebook, Mark McDonald, Keith, Phil, Scott, Gina, and then, of course, Eugene. Much love and respect. And also another thank you just to everybody for helping us keep the conversation going. Like in the chat, I just see you guys talking to each other as you're talking with us, and it just makes it just is fun. It feels good. It's a real community where conversation and ideas are being shared, and it's really cool to see, especially in real time. So love you guys. Thank you. We'll see you on Thursday, but don't forget, tomorrow you got Broncos for breakfast. You got some building the Broncos tomorrow night. It's going to be dope.
Have a great week, guys. We'll see you Thursday. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.